Okay, so right here are the additives. This is kaolin clay, buttermilk, and goat's milk. The fragrance, I'm just going to use Satsuma orange since it's a test. The colorants you saw, my sodium lactate, my mold is all ready to go. I sprayed the inside with rubbing out. I have my stick blender ready to go. These are my hard oils. I have my coconut oil, shea, and lard. I have olive oil and castor oil, my lye water, and we don't need the thermometer for this technique because we want it to go as hot as possible. So I'm gonna make my lye water. I know I told you guys to mix slowly, but you know me. And so I'm gonna stir this in. We want it to be at its hottest. So normally I would say wait till it cools, but I'm gonna go ahead and add the rest of the lye and get this next, and then I'm gonna add in the sodium lactate, and then I'll come back to the next step. Okay, so now I have my sodium lactate in there, and it's really, really hot, and I want to keep it this hot. So then I'm gonna pull over. Oh, it's fogging up the camera, I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep it that hot and just pour it directly on. I would hold a spatula so it doesn't splash. I'm doing it. So just make sure you get all of that out of there. And then I would put that directly in water in the sink. Where did I put my spatula? There it is. And now I'm going to stir this until it melts. A tip is to, when you put your hard oils, is to put it in here in smaller chunks, smaller pieces. So you're just going to stir this till it's all the way melted. And then I'm going to do that, and then when it's melted, I'll come back and I will show you the next step. One thing I'll talk about while we wait, the good benefit of working with lard is it gives your soap almost a translucent, semi-opaque look to your soap, and you get the whitest and brightest colors from it. I don't know. I'm going to let those sit and melt for just a second. I don't want to wait too long because it does have the lye in it. But into my liquid oils, I'm going to add all of my additives. And then I'm going to give it a good stick blend, and then I will come back and we will do the next step. Okay, so that's well mixed, and then I wanted to show you over here. There's still some chunks, so I just go in and I give it a quick blitz. You just want to make sure that it's fully incorporated. So to do is just stick blend it out. Okay, now I'm gonna pour in my liquid oils, and I'm gonna scrape this out, and then we'll come back and I will hand stir for life. Okay, so now I just stir, and yes, I'm stirring with my stick blender. Normally I would use a spatula, but one-handed it works. You're gonna notice when you've reached emulsion, I don't go past emulsion. Sometimes I'll go to a light trace, but in most instances, when I'm wanting a certain design, I just fully incorporate my oils. And like up here, you can tell it's not emulsified because of the way it's running and not staying together. So just stir. I'm going to give it a quick blitz with the stick blender, kind of speed it up a little bit. The fragrance I'm using, the Satsuma orange, kind of slows down trace a little bit, I've noticed. So getting this up there to a light trace won't be a bad thing. Okay, so now I want you to notice that you can't really see the oil sitting on top anymore. And when you pick up your stick blender, it's staying together. It's not separating. This is where I'm going to go ahead and break off into 2 different pitchers. One thing I want to talk about is having patience with your soap. It's going to sound really odd and funny, but You have to treat your soap with love. So I take my time at this step. I've already put my fragrance in, and I'm just hand stirring it in. I'm not rushing it. I'm just making sure everything's fully incorporated. With the heat transfer method, you should have more time to work with your soap and be able to do what you want to with it. It's not necessarily a recipe that's going to seize on you right away. If you want the recipe that I used for this batch, I will give it to you and you guys can try it. It's a good test recipe for if you're testing out colors and stuff. So we're going to add the green. I don't measure my colors. I'm sorry. I probably should have for you guys, but stir, stir, stir. Again, make sure you're scraping your sides because that's unincorporated stuff that if it gets into your batch can cause it to separate. Okay, add some pink. I do use a little more pink than I do the green because the pink is my favorite and I want it to stand out the most, the brightest. But if these are mica and more micas, and they stay true to color for a couple years. I have a soap that's a couple years old and it's still as bright as the day I made it. So these micas are really, really worth their money. So I'm going to go and I'm going to stir these a little bit more, scrape them down good and mixed, and then we're going to pour it into the column mold. I'm testing out a liner and the pull through tool, so we're going to have to see what we think of both of them. So I'll be right back. Okay guys, so this is the 3-inch column mold that we have. I'm testing a new liner to see if it's gonna work. It's actually more economical and I think that's better. You will have a textured edge on the outside, but I don't think that's gonna matter. Okay, so they're still really, really runny, but I'm gonna go ahead and start pouring. Dead in the center, we'll try to. While on camera, it's kind of hard. Just dead center it. Okay, so I went ahead and I poured a lot in. And I'm just pouring it into the center from kind of high up because I want it to go down. If I pour it closer, it's just going to stay on top. Alright, we're going to pull it out. Maybe. I might not be able to do that. Yeah, there we go. Just pull that straight up and through. And I can't tell on top if it did anything yet. I kind of see stuff. But you can't really tell yet. So maybe I did it wrong. Maybe I should have used a funnel picture, but when I cut it, we'll definitely see if it did anything. But there it is. This is the rough draft of the tool my dad made. We're gonna make them different if it works. I can't tell. I can kind of see that it did something, but I can't really tell. So we'll cut it tomorrow, probably after 12 hours. But it's not leaking, so the mold's working okay. Or the liner, I mean. So we'll check it in a second. Alright, so it's been a good time still, and I want you to see my batter is still really fluid. For those of you ladies who like to stir a lot, it will stay fluid. This is a very fluid technique. Heat transfer keeps it fluid for a while. Also, Jamie and Stacy, you were telling me your recipe was about a 40 on the oleic fatty acid, and that keeps your soap fluid longer. I'm going to go ahead and pour this into another mold. I'm going to try and run it down the sides of the mold, and then maybe take a chopstick and swirl it up a bit. I don't know, we'll see. But ask me questions while I'm doing this, and we will learn some soap stuff together. Alright, ladies, I wanted you to see how I poured this. I poured it going around the liner, and I would turn it each time, and I held it at an angle. So if you can see down there, it's kind of got like a spiral going. Stacy, when I do the ice method, it's because I want to keep my batter fluid, and working at hotter temperatures is just bad for you and your soap, just because it makes it harder because it's going to accelerate a lot faster. But depending on the technique I'm doing, I will only go to emulsion. Right now, I'm kind of wishing with the soap that we just made that I would have thickened up the batter a little bit. I think it would have held the design as I pulled it through better. But that's why I'm testing it out. It's just technique and desired outcome. If you want a drop swirl, you want your batter to be a little bit thicker, but not much thicker than we have it right here. So I just mixed the two colors together in the cup, and now I have this really long chopstick, and I'm just gonna kind of, I don't know, maybe swirl it. Now I'm going to go through and scrape the sides down, and then we'll cut these tomorrow.